It's not me telling you that you can't have it. She probably recognised your car.
Yeah.
Oh my God. You!
Friends, if you want to watch super hit movie My Oxford Year, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Friends, in today's video, the movie we're going to talk about is called My Oxford Year. We will talk about what this movie is, and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie. In today's video I'm going to tell you, I'm also going to give you all the information on which platform, or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie. Also, we will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film. Apart from this, we will discuss about the facts of this film, storyline, star cast, actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end. So let's start the video. Write something like that for movie name and year. #quick orientation. My Oxford Year began as a novel by Julia Whelan, published 2018, and was adapted for Netflix in 2025. The book centers on Eleanor Ella Duran, a Rhodes Scholar type, while the streaming film shifts names/backgrounds, Anna De La Vega in the movie, and tightens/reshapes some plot beats during adaptation. Book Reporter, 1. People.com, 2. How the story unfolds, structure and point of view. The novel mostly follows a conventional, linear coming-of-age arc that spans a single academic year. It is grounded in the protagonist's inner life. Whelan tells the story from the student's perspective. The book's voice is intimate and reflective, so readers move through Oxford, flirtation, and moral choices with Ella as the emotional center. The prose favors inward, observational beats, poetry, classrooms, household scenes, that let the reader linger on doubts and small rituals. The film adaptation translates that line of time into a classic three-act cinematic shape. Setup, arrival and meet-cute, complication, growing attachment and the illness/revelation, and a concentrated emotional climax and denouement that plays bigger on spectacle and visible grief. Book Reporter, 1. People.com, 2. #key turning points and narrative beats. What moves the plot? Inciting incident. The splash/first meeting. The slightly comic collision with Jamie immediately displaces the protagonist's tidy plans and initiates the romantic plotline, pub night, flirtation, ambiguity. This is the door through which the story enters romance rather than strictly academic ambition. Book Reporter, 1. Midpoint reversal. Jamie's distance and the medical revelation. What begins as teasing, sensual intimacy curdles when Jamie withdraws and becomes secretive. The discovery that Jamie has a hereditary/serious illness reframes the courtship from a typical love story into a moral and existential dilemma. Stay and risk sacrificing career and a predictable future, or leave to preserve plans. This is the emotional fulcrum that turns year abroad rom-com into grief-adjacent drama. Book Reporter, 1. Climax. The collapse/hospital sequence. The plot's most intense, decisive scenes come when Jamie's health spirals. Physical collapse, family confrontations, and the protagonist's anguished choices. In the film, the collapse is staged as the final, irreversible turn that forces closure. Decider, 3. Resolution/time skip. After the injury/illness beats, the story fast-forwards. The protagonist either mourns and carries the relationship's lessons forward or, in the book's less final variant, contemplates an open, bittersweet future. The cinematic version opts for a more definitive, elegiac endpoint that frames the whole year as transformative precisely because it was brief. Cinema Blend. 4. Decider. 3. #core conflicts and stakes. Ambition versus intimacy. The protagonist has a clear, career-oriented goal, the Rhodes/academic/career option, that clashes with an unexpected love that asks her to choose a life defined by presence rather than prestige. Autonomy versus caretaking/loyalty. When Jamie refuses aggressive treatment or withdraws emotionally, the story tests whether the protagonist will respect his choices or attempt to change them, and whether she can remain herself while loving someone who is self-destructive. Ethical/power overlay. The teacher-student dynamic, or mentor/peer imbalance as staged, introduces ethical complexity. Attraction intersects with institutional power and social expectation, making decisions morally ambiguous rather than purely romantic. This is played differently in novel versus screen versions. Book Reporter 1. Hashtag thematic effects and emotional impact. Asterisk mortality and the seize the day ethic. Whether the end is final, film, or bittersweet, book, both versions insist that limited time intensifies meaning. The story argues that a life measured in nows can be richer than one measured solely by future accomplishments. The film version leans harder into mortality to deliver a cathartic, devastating payoff. The novel gives more space for processing and mixed outcomes. Cinema Blend 4. Decider 3. Asterisk grief as education. Grief becomes a curriculum. The protagonist learns not only about loss, but about the shape of one's priorities, how to mourn without being consumed, and how to carry another person's ideas forward as a life choice, teaching, traveling, or both. Asterisk the cost of certainty. The narrative interrogates the hubris of plans. The protagonist's meticulous future is tested, revealing that certainty can be impoverishing when it closes the door on human contingency. Emotionally, the story is calculated to move. Intimate scenes and small domestic moments make the heartbreak register as personal. The film's structural tightening magnifies that by concentrating the sorrow into a few thunderous scenes, which explains both why many viewers find it devastating and why some critics call it emotionally manipulative. Roger Ebert 5. Hashtag how the adaptation choices changed the narrative focus. Whelan's original project began in screenplay form, and the Netflix film deliberately borrows from the screenplay roots while also altering character backgrounds, e.g., changing Ella Anna and shifting her pre-Oxford life, compressing subplots, and making the ending more conclusive and tragic. Those decisions pushed the story away from a slow, interior novel about identity and vocation toward a concentrated romantic tragedy that emphasizes immediate emotional effect over layered ambiguity. For readers who loved the novel's interiority and political/academic subplots, the adaptation feels like a sharpening and a narrowing. For viewers who want an emotionally forceful, self-contained film experience, the changes make sense dramaturgically. People.com 2. Book Reporter 1. Hashtag short critical read. What the structure achieves and where it strains. Asterisk strengths asterisk the linear, intimate progression lets character psychology accumulate so later losses feel earned. The reveal structure, slow suspicion medical truth collapse, converts a light premise into meaningful stakes. The film's more decisive ending gives viewers a clear emotional through line and a powerful catharsis. Decider 3. Asterisk limitations asterisk because the emotional pivot relies heavily on illness and the ethics of choosing to stay with/leave a sick partner, the story can feel contrived if early character detail isn't deep enough. Some critics argue the film sacrifices nuance and some of the protagonist's agency for melodrama. Roger Ebert 5. Hashtag bottom line, third-person summation. The story of My Oxford Year follows a broadly conventional coming-of-age/romance structure, but Whelan's original, novel-level intimacy and inward focus let the book explore doubt, vocation, and grief with subtlety. The Netflix adaptation reshapes names, backgrounds, and especially the ending to heighten finality and emotional punch. That structural tightening converts a bittersweet, reflective novel into a more classical romantic tragedy on screen. Both forms trade similar ideas: ambition, mortality, and what it means to live meaningfully, but they make different formal choices about how final and how public the protagonist's learning must feel. Book Reporter 1. Cinema Blend 4. Decider 3. If you want, the assistant can produce a beat-by-beat, chapter-by-chapter breakdown of the novel. Great if you're studying it, or write a comparison table that lists character development in My Oxford Year. From beginning to end, My Oxford Year positions its characters not simply as romantic archetypes but as individuals shaped by competing ambitions, unspoken fears, and the constraints of time. Both in Julia Whelan's novel and in the Netflix adaptation, the success of the story depends less on plot twists than on the gradual revealing. and in some cases transformation, of its central figures. While the novel leans heavily on interiority and layered emotional detail, the film trims some of this complexity in favor of clear, concentrated arcs that drive the romance and emotional stakes. #protagonist. Ella Duran, novel, / Anna De La Vega, film. Initial portrayal *. She enters the story as a driven, self-assured young woman arriving at Oxford with a prestigious scholarship and a meticulously planned future. In the novel, Ella is politically engaged and has a job lined up in American politics, giving her a sharp sense of purpose. The film's Anna retains this ambition but streamlines her backstory, presenting her as career-focused without the same depth of political context. Growth and transformation *. Her arc is the most pronounced. At the start, she views her Oxford year as a resume milestone, a temporary detour before real life begins. Her worldview is oriented toward achievement, and her relationships are secondary. The gradual deepening of her connection with Jamie, initially a flirtation, later a profound emotional bond, forces her to question the primacy of ambition over presence, and whether a life is best measured by its length or its intensity. By the end, she has undergone a shift from certainty to openness. The carefully mapped career path is no longer the sole measure of success. In the book, this transformation is more nuanced. Ella keeps her ambitions but integrates them with a richer understanding of love and loss. In the film, Anna's shift is more dramatic, shaped by a finality that permanently alters her trajectory. #Jamie Davenport, novel and film. Initial portrayal *. Jamie is first seen as charming, teasing, and almost stereotypically Oxford in demeanor, a confident, witty tutor who enjoys verbal sparring. This initial lightness conceals deeper layers: loyalty to his family, an understated intellectualism, and a guardedness about his personal life. Growth and transformation *. Jamie's development is subtler and more tragic. He does not transform so much as reveal himself. His illness is the key to understanding his seemingly erratic behavior. His flirtation mixed with withdrawal. In the novel, his arc is about acceptance of his mortality and the bittersweet act of letting someone in despite knowing the relationship's likely brevity. In the film, this acceptance is more abrupt, with Jamie's vulnerability brought to the surface in concentrated emotional bursts. Narrative function *. Jamie's choices, especially his refusal to let illness dictate all of his relationships, act as both a catalyst for the protagonist's growth and a mirror for her values. Through him, the story asks whether love is worth the inevitable grief it may bring. #supporting characters. Maggie, roommate/friend. In the novel, Maggie is more than comic relief. She's a grounding force, giving Ella a safe space for candid conversation and functioning as an emotional barometer for the protagonist's state of mind. In the film, Maggie retains her warmth and wit but appears in fewer, more concentrated moments. Her role streamlined to keep focus on the central romance. Jamie's family *. Particularly in the book, they add depth to his backstory, revealing the weight of inherited illness and the quiet grief of those who love him. In the adaptation, they appear mainly in high-stakes moments, hospital scenes, final sequences, condensing their emotional contribution into pivotal beats. Academic and political acquaintances *. The novel uses these side characters to highlight Ella's internal tug-of-war between her professional ambitions and personal life. The film largely trims them, sacrificing thematic complexity for narrative efficiency. Relationship dynamics and their impact. The evolving relationship between the protagonist and Jamie is the heart of the story's emotional architecture. At first, their connection is marked by playful friction, banter, cultural differences, and unspoken attraction. Over time, intimacy deepens through vulnerability, particularly as Jamie's illness becomes part of the shared reality. Conflict as growth catalyst. The protagonist's struggle, whether to stay in a relationship shadowed by loss or protect her own future, forces her to articulate what she truly values. Mutual transformation Jamie learns to let himself be fully known, while the protagonist learns that love can coexist with impermanence. Secondary relationships friendships and familial ties provide contrast to the central romance, showing different models of loyalty, care, and sacrifice. Layering and depth. In the novel, characters are layered through extended internal monologues, political observations, and subtle cultural contrasts between the US and the UK. This creates a textured emotional world where motivations feel earned. In the film, layering is achieved visually and through performance cues, lingering glances, silences, and a strong focus on climactic scenes rather than slow-burn conversations. While this sacrifices some narrative depth, it heightens immediate emotional impact. Final assessment. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year offers characters who are meaningfully shaped by their experiences. The protagonist's transformation, from career-centric certainty to a more expansive, present-oriented life philosophy, is the clearest arc. Jamie's journey is less about change and more about revelation, but it anchors the story's themes of mortality and intentional living. Secondary characters, while less developed in the adaptation, still serve to reinforce the central conflicts and values at stake. The interplay of relationships, motivations, and personal growth ensures that the story's emotional weight is driven not by plot mechanics alone, but by the authentic evolution or revelation of the people at its center. If you want, I can map each main character's arc beat by beat alongside the key scenes where their growth is visible, especially comparing novel to film. That would make the shifts in characterization crystal clear. Here is a detailed third-person analysis of the performances in My Oxford Year, blending critical responses and audience sentiment. Lead performances. Sofia Carson and Corey Mylchreest. Sofia Carson as Anna De La Vega. Positives. Some critics and interviews praise her performance as emotionally grounded and intelligent. She reportedly studied Oxford's literary culture to bring authenticity, and her dual role as executive producer reflects personal investment in the character. Mixvale. Teen Vogue. Mint. Critic reviews include descriptions of Carson anchoring the film with grace, showcasing ambition and vulnerability, a performance deemed capable and matched to the character's arc. Mint. Cinema Express. Movie Feast. Criticisms and audience backlash. Many viewers and some reviewers found her delivery flat and unconvincing. Comments like her emotional scenes lacked depth, and acts the same way in every role, emphasize a perceived emotional disconnect. Indiatimes. Movie. Watching My Oxford Year solidified my opinion that Sofia Carson is a dreadful actress. Not even Corey could save it. Indiatimes. This polarizing reception highlights a significant divide between critics who appreciate subtlety and viewers hoping for more expressive warmth. Corey Mylchreest as Jamie Davenport. Bright spot and rising star. Mylchreest is widely noted for delivering emotional depth, warmth, and sincerity. Reviewers frequently laud his quiet yearning, boyish charm, and ability to convey vulnerability subtly. Bollywood Shahadis. Cinema Express. Cinema Blend. Inneriestreview.com.au. One reviewer called him the show stealer, with comparisons to Hugh Grant in terms of charm and emotional tone. Bollywood Shahadis. Creator Insight. Mylchreest himself commented that the film's more tragic ending better serves Jamie's philosophy of living deliberately, reinforcing the emotional integrity of his portrayal. Cinema Blend. Supporting cast highlights. Dougray Scott, William Davenport, stands out, particularly in scenes of filial heartbreak. Reviewers describe his performance as raw, haunting, and deeply moving, arguably the film's emotional linchpin. Mint. Catherine McCormack also contributes authenticity and emotional layers as Jamie's mother, though she receives less individual attention in reviews. Movie Feast. EW.com. Comic relief and ensemble strength. Harry Trevaldwyn as Charlie, Poppy Gilbert as Maggie, and others add levity and context to Anna's world. Critics mention they enrich the story, providing a lighter texture to the romantic drama. Bollywood Shahadis. EW.com. Movie. Summary evaluation. Sofia Carson delivers a restrained, internally focused portrayal of Anna, which some viewers find compelling and grounded, while others criticize it for a lack of emotional resonance. Her performance consistently draws mixed reactions, praised for subtlety by critics, rejected by many viewers seeking more expressive warmth. Corey Mylchreest, however, earns uniform acclaim. His portrayal of Jamie is seen as charming, sincere, and emotionally authentic, often described as the emotional core of the film. Among the supporting cast, Dougray Scott stands out for a particularly affecting performance as a grieving father, while the ensemble effectively complements the main narrative with humor and grounded human moments. Overall, third-person perspective. The acting in My Oxford Year is uneven but memorable in places. Carson's performance is divisive. Some laud her nuanced restraint, while others decry it as emotionally flat. In contrast, Mylchreest's turn as Jamie is widely praised for its warmth and vulnerability, elevating the romantic storyline. Supporting actors like Dougray Scott and Harry Trevaldwyn enhance the emotional texture, providing the grief and humor necessary to balance the film's tone. Let me know if you'd like scene-by-scene breakdowns of standout moments or a comparison of novel versus cinematic character portrayals. Here is a detailed third-person assessment of how director Iain Morris shapes My Oxford Year, focusing on tone, mood, style, pacing, and visual storytelling. Director's vision and tonal balancing. Iain Morris, best known for his work on the sitcom The Inbetweeners, ventures into new territory by directing this romantic drama, a genre very different from his comedic roots. His background suggests a comfort with observational humor, which he consciously blends with elegiac emotionality in this film. martinsid.com. The Indian Express. Morris intended for audiences to run through all the emotions associated with a wonderful, noisy, chaotic, unexpected, funny, heartbreaking experience that is falling in love. martinsid.com. This tonal ambition is grounded in his directorial approach. Visual style and cinematic craft. Cinematography and lighting. The film is visually anchored by Oscar-nominated DP Remy Adefarasin, who brings a heightened realism to Oxford's iconic settings, Magdalen, Bodleian Library, Hertford College, without resorting to overly stylized filters. His work favors naturalistic lighting and smooth dolly movements over handheld or frenetic camera work. martinsid.com. Wikipedia. Production design and locations. Katrin Meredith's design juxtaposes Oxford's ancient academic architecture with the vibrancy of contemporary student life, from ivy-covered halls to lively pub outings and kebab runs. martinsid.com. Time Out Worldwide. Sound and score. Composer Isabella Summers delivers an eclectic, emotionally nuanced soundtrack, drawing from genres such as hip-hop, RZA, and classic Bond themes, that stands apart from traditional romantic comedy scores. martinsid.com. Mood, pacing, and editing. Romantic atmosphere. The film bathes Oxford in soft golden hour light, creating a dreamlike or nostalgic quality to the romance. Gazetely. Ready, steady, cut. Montages and subjective moments. Early montages of Anna and Jamie's courtship use effervescent editing rhythms to convey the intensity and idealism of first love, often heightened by swelling musical cues. Gazetely. Emotional breaths. Morris strategically allows quiet moments, without musical manipulation, to linger. These pauses underscore key emotional beats and heighten intimacy. Movie feast. Thematic and stylistic impact. Balancing gravity with levity. Morris honors the story's shift from light-hearted romance into deeper territory, navigating the tonal pivot from youthful flirtation to emotional reckoning following Jamie's diagnosis and eventual death. The Indian Express. Indiatimes. Emotional clarity and resonance. The choice of the more definitive, bittersweet ending, Anna carrying on alone after Jamie's passing, was a deliberate narrative decision to underscore themes of mortality and living fully in the moment. EW.com. Cinema Blend. People.com. Critical reception of direction. Praise. Several reviewers appreciate Morris's handling of emotional and academic worlds, finding the film heartwarming and emotionally authentic, visually enchanting and thoughtfully paced. Movie Feast. Ready Steady Cut. PremieringNow.com. Mint. Criticism. Others argue that despite Morris's solid visual competence, the film often falls back on genre clichés, with predictable storytelling and insufficient emotional depth. Digital Spy. The Guardian. Decider. Some note a tonal imbalance, specifically a jarring shift from rom-com lightness to melodramatic weight. The Indian Express. India TV News. Summary. Third-person perspective. Director Iain Morris reshapes his comedic sensibilities into a more nuanced, emotionally textured cinematic language in My Oxford Year. He frames the film through a visual aesthetic that fuses Oxford's timeless architecture with poetic lighting and refined camera movement. Soundscapes that dodge conventional rom-com tropes and instead weave in thoughtful, experimental scoring. Tonal modulation that transitions from youthful exuberance to elegiac reflection. Pacing rhythms that combine playful energy with contemplative stillness at critical emotional junctures. While Morris's stylistic choices enhance the film's atmosphere and thematic weight, particularly around love, loss, and intentional living, they occasionally struggle against a screenplay that some feel remains too formulaic. Nonetheless, his direction lends the film a visual richness and emotional clarity that, for many, elevates it above typical streaming romance fare. Netflix.com/tudum/article. https://imagesoap.com/thumbnail/osowxuwvs and qjbk pireno jdex jjykpmsowafqzmioumxfauyuzxlsftwlfgqa https://www.netflix.com/tudum/articles/my-oxford-year-sofia-carson-release-date-photos-news. Here's a visual glimpse into the cinematographic atmosphere of My Oxford Year, showcasing the film's use of framing, lighting, and setting to immerse viewers in its world. #cinematography. Crafting beauty, mood, and emotional texture. #1. Lighting and color palette. Remy Adefarasin, the film's cinematographer, bathes Oxford in a golden hour glow, a warm, diffuse lighting that renders the historic environment almost dreamlike. This perpetual soft light transforms quadrangles, the River Cherwell, and library interiors into romantic, idealized spaces that under the film's nostalgic tone. Gazetely. 1. This choice reinforces the film's emotional tenor, elevating scenes of romance and university life into something rich, ethereal, and visually enchanting. The lighting isn't merely aesthetic. It narrativizes the protagonist's emotional journey, emphasizing the magical feel of first love and academic discovery. #2. Framing and movement. Adefarasin's camera glides through Oxford's architectural grandeur, favoring smooth, reverent tracking over handheld energy. These fluid movements evoke a tourist's reverence, inviting the audience to explore and fall in love with the setting alongside the characters. Gazetely. 1. Early montages employ upbeat editing rhythms paired with these visuals, compressing time and elevating romance into a subjective memorscape. The camera's choreography enhances emotional engagement, turning settings into silent storytellers. #3. Visually striking moments. Even amid critiques of narrative predictability, critics consistently highlight the film's aesthetic beauty. The cinematography is praised for revitalizing familiar rom-com visuals with sincerity and emotional resonance, even if the storytelling feels conventional. Decider. 2. Gazetely. 1. Scenes featuring sweeping views of Oxford landmarks, sunlit corridors, or quiet intimacy in candlelit rooms stand out, visually arresting moments that linger beyond dialogue. #4. Atmosphere, tension, and emotional texture. Though the lighting remains soft throughout, its contrast, warm versus cooler tones, subtly shifts to support emotional beats, from luminous beginnings to more somber, introspective exchanges. This visual modulation helps underscore the tonal pivot from romance to grief. Moreover, intimate emotional moments often rely on stillness and restraint, letting the camera hold in quietly composed frames rather than break into kinetic movement, a choice that deepens emotional focus and grounding. #Summary. Third-person perspective. The cinematography of My Oxford Year, under Remy Adefarasin's direction, plays a pivotal role in shaping the film's romantic and reflective atmosphere. By flooding Oxford with soft, golden light, the visuals create a fairy tale-like ambience that elevates ordinary student life into poetic experience. Fluid camera movements and reverent framing position Oxford not just as a backdrop, but as a living, emotionally charged character in the film. Aesthetic memorability resides in the quiet beauty of framed architecture and light, offering visual warmth even amid narrative predictability. The cinematographic approach subtly supports emotional arcs, softening love, introspection, and grief with visual sincerity. In sum, the film's visual design may not save a formulaic story, but it enriches it, imbuing every courtyard, glance, and hushed moment with a glowing allure that makes My Oxford Year visually unforgettable. Let me know if you'd like a comparison between specific scenes in the novel versus their visual adaptation, or an analysis of how lighting shifts during the story's emotional pivot. 1. https://gazzetely.com/2025/08/entertainment/my-oxford-year-source=chat My Oxford Year Review. Beautiful scenery, hollow story, Gazetely. 2. https://my-oxford-year-netflix-movie-review-stream-it-/or-skip-it/@/chat-gpt.com. Stream it or skip it. My Oxford Year on Netflix, a Sofia Carson romance set among a bunch of old musty books. Here's a third-person analysis of My Oxford Year's editing and pacing, with close attention to how rhythm and narrative structure shape its emotional and storytelling impact. #Editing and pacing. Flowing or frustrating? #Slow burn with glimpsed momentum. Reviewers characterize the film as a slow burn romance that rewards patience, especially once deeper emotional stakes emerge. India Today praises its reflective rhythm and simmering chemistry, emphasizing that it's a story about love, loss, timing, and intentional living. India Today. 1. Similarly, Movie Feast applauds the editing, noting that Iain Morris's direction maintains perfect emotional pacing throughout the runtime, allowing romantic beats and character moments the space they need to resonate. Movie Feast. 2. #stumbles in the first act. On the flip side, critiques point out that the film's beginning drags. Ready Steady Cut remarks that the first 30 minutes feel laborious, with chemistry that seems forced rather than unfolding organically. Ready Steady Cut. 3. RogerEbert.com similarly suggests that the film feels slight. The early pace doesn't sweep the audience away, and it takes time for the emotional core to emerge. Roger Ebert. 4. #uneven flow. Drag or rush? Some audience feedback backs these mixed views. On IMDb, one user described the film as rushed and uninspiring, with romance that felt forced and little chance to connect emotionally, suggesting the pacing left some viewers disengaged. IMDb 5. But others saw the opposite. Another user called it amazing, enjoying a great flow from the beginning to the end, with constant engagement and no dull moment. IMDb 5. #montages and emotional beats. Technically, the editing employs dynamic montages, pub karaoke, moonlit kebab truck meals, quick transitions between academic and romantic scenes, to inject energy and visual interest. Top 3 US highlights these rhythmic editing choices as key pacing tools. Top 3 US 6. These montage sequences help modulate the film's pace, infusing warmth and momentum amidst quieter, introspective scenes. #impact on emotion and storytelling. When it works when the film aligns pacing with emotional stakes, as when deeper revelations surface, it pulls the viewer in, reinforcing themes of living deliberately and loving wholly. This balance between quiet introspection and cinematic movement amplifies the narrative's reflective tone. India Today. 1. Movie feast. 2. When it stumbles the pacing feels uneven in places, either too slow in setup or too swift in emotional transitions, separating the audience from the characters. Critics note that once the twist arrives, the story becomes prescribed, making what follows feel unsurprising. The Guardian. 7. Roger Ebert. 4. Conclusion. Third-person perspective. The editing and pacing of My Oxford Year craft an uneven yet heartfelt rhythm. The film unfolds as a slow-burning romance. It allows its emotional arcs to blossom with care, particularly through montage sequences and space for character reflection. Still, the early sections can feel sluggish, with moments where the momentum falters, and some emotional beats risk arriving too neatly. When balanced, the editing enriches narrative and mood. When misaligned, it highlights the story's genre reliance. In short, the pacing is deliberate and gently measured, with occasional jolts where flow suffers. Yet ultimately, it supports the film's thematic resonance of seizing life's fleeting beauty. Let me know if you'd like a scene-by-scene breakdown of where the pacing succeeds or falls short. Happy to dive deeper. 1. https://www.indiatoday/entertainment/shot/story/ My Oxford Year Review. Sofia Carson, Corey Mylchreest. My Oxford Year Review. An imperfect yet effective slow burn anchored by Sofia Carson, Corey Mylchreest. India Today. 2. https://www.moviefeast.info/my-oxford-year-review/?UTM_source=chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Review Movie Feast. 3. https://readysteadycut.com/2025/08/01/my-oxford-year-review/??-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Review. 4. https://www.rogerebert.com/reviews/my-oxford-year-netflix-film-review-2025??-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Movie Review and Film Summary. 2025 Roger Ebert. 5. https://www.mdb.com/title/tt49783422/reviews/???source=chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year. 2025. User Reviews IMDb. 6. https://www.sofia-carson-august-1-2025/???source=chat-gpt.com. Review. Netflix's My Oxford Year starring Sofia Carson released August 1, 2025. 7. https://www.thegUardian.com/film/2025/August/01/my-oxford-year-review-netflix?mark-UTM_source=chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Review. Tusso Netflix romance trades on Anglophilia. #Quick Orientation. The film's original score was written by Isabella Summers, aka Isa Machine of Florence and the Machine, and a soundtrack album, 18 tracks, was released by Netflix Music on August 1, 2025. The album mixes Summers' short instrumental cues with a set of needle drops and one original vocal single, Make It Happen by Laura Welsh. Film Music Reporter. 1. Spotify. 2. How the music shapes atmosphere and emotion. From a third-person perspective, the soundtrack functions on two complementary levels. Intrusive, diegetic pop, party songs, covers, pub karaoke, that locate scenes socially, and understated composing that underpins character moments and transitions. The needle drops, everything from Block Party to Chapel Roan, Dua Lipa, Kylie Minogue and Coldplay, make the film feel of the moment and help sell campus nightlife, while Summer's score supplies the film's private emotional register, short cues for intimacy, longer motifs for loss. Radio Times. 3. Vague Visages. 4. Practical effect asterisk. The pop tracks pull the audience into a lively, contemporary Oxford. Pubs, parties, karaoke, and summer's cues pull back to the interior life of the leads. Longing, tenderness, and later grief. That push/pull is the film's primary musical architecture. Vague visages. 4. Hashtag standout pieces and recurring material. Asterisk Laura Welsh, Make It Happen. Placed early, title/arrival sequence, and written as an original song for the film. It functions as a bright, aspirational oral signature for the protagonist's initial optimism. Film music reporter. 5. Asterisk instrumental cues by Isabella Summers. The released album and track lists show many short scene-specific cues with evocative titles: Jamie and Anna, The Kiss, Tears, Romance 2, Oxford, which indicates a scoring strategy that ties discrete melodic or textural motifs to recurring emotional beats. Those cue titles and short durations suggest motifs recur in variations rather than long, symphonic themes. Game-os.com. 6. Apple Music web player. 7. Asterisk end credit/pop placement asterisk. The film closes into a big, familiar pop song during credits. E.g., a Coldplay track is reported as the end credit song, which leaves viewers with an emotionally resonant and themic aftertaste. Vague visages. 4. Hashtag use of diegesis versus underscore, and the effect of silence. The film deliberately alternates diegetic music, what characters hear in clubs/pubs, and non-diegetic underscore, what the audience hears as interior commentary. This separation is used narratively. Party sequences lean on high-energy needle drops to communicate belonging and flirtation. The private, pivotal moments, confessions, hospital scenes, quiet grief, rely on Summer's sparse underscore. Several critics note that the score is restrained. It never pushes its luck, but instead gently squeezes our emotions in the background, which implies director and composer intentionally employed silence and restraint at key beats rather than overscoring. That editorial choice lets performances breathe and makes the musical swells land harder when they arrive. Film review. 8. Game-os.com. 6. Hashtag texture, instrumentation and sonic identity. What the score sounds like. Published materials and the composer's resume point to an art pop/atmospheric sensibility. Summer's previous work and pop background inform the score's textures. The record of short cues and comments in soundtrack write-ups suggests Summers uses intimate instrumentation, piano, restrained strings and ambient textures, rather than bombastic orchestral gestures. Where vocal songs appear, Marcel Bradinini's tracks, Laura Welsh, they are arranged with piano/strings or gentle accompaniment to underline melancholy or hope. That interpretation follows the published cue titles and soundtrack write-ups, and is consistent with Summer's previous scoring style. Game-os.com. 6. Fandom Wire. 9. Wikipedia. 10. Hashtag does the music enhance or overpower the film? Overall, the consensus among critics who comment on the music is that it enhances rather than overwhelms. The score's restraint and the smart placement of needle drops create an emotional architecture that supports the story's tonal shifts, romance, reckoning, elegy, without calling undue attention to itself. At the same time, the high-profile pop choices intentionally draw attention in scenes where social energy matters, parties, pub culture, and that contrast is part of the film's design rather than a clash. Film review. 8. Radio Times. 3. Hashtag short critical read, third-person summation. Musically, My Oxford Year is a well-judged hybrid. Isabella Summers' score provides a restrained, character-centered underscore made of short, recurring cues that track intimacy and loss, while the music supervisors pepper the film with contemporary needle drops that animate campus life. That dual strategy both grounds the film socially and invests its quieter moments with emotional weight. Critics note the score's subtlety as a strength, and the original single, Make It Happen and end credit pop choice give the movie clear musical anchors audiences remember. Film music reporter. 1. Vague visages. 4. Film review. 8. If the user wants, the assistant can now. Asterisk produce a time-stamped scene-by-scene music log, which cue/needle drop appears where, or asterisk pull the official soundtrack playlist, Spotify/Apple Music, and highlight the 6 pieces most worth listening to outside the film. Which would be most useful? 1. https://filmmusicreporter.com/2025/08/0one/my-oxford-year-soundtrack-album-release/??chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack Album Released. Film Music Reporter. 2. https://opened spotify.com/album/1opubx1evesarjarmjgn4g?UTM_source=chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack from the Netflix film, Spotify. 3. https://www.radiotimes.com/movies/my-oxford-year-source=chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack. All the songs featured in Netflix rom-com. 4. https://viguevisage.com/2025/08/03/my-oxford-year-soundtrack-netflix-songs/???-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack. Every song in the 2025 Netflix movie. 5. https://filmmusicreporter.com//Laura Welsh's original song Make It Happen from Netflix's My Oxford Year Soundtrack Release/GPM Laura Welsh's original song Make It Happen from Netflix's My. 6. https://www.game-host.com/albums/1305425/my_score Oxford_year_soundtrack under from under the_Netflix_film/question_UTM_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack from the Netflix film. 7. https://music apple.com//song/oxford/18303318022?UTM_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. Oxford Song by Isabella Summers, Apple Music. 8. https://www.filmreview.com/new-reviews/my-oxford-year-source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Film Review. 9. https://fandom-wire.com/my-oxford-year-soundtrack-every-song-from-Netflix-drama/question-UTM_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Soundtrack. Every song from Netflix drama. 10. https://wiki/isabella_summers?UTM_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. Isabella Summers Wikipedia. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year explores several intertwined themes: ambition versus vulnerability, mortality and presence, identity and transformation, and delivers them with varying degrees of subtlety and resonance. 1. Ambition versus authentic living. A central tension arises in Anna's internal conflict. Her meticulously planned Wall Street career versus the spontaneous demands of love and introspection. This is visually and narratively signaled by her deferral from Goldman Sachs to study poetry, and solidified by her ultimate choice to abandon her corporate path in favor of an emotionally authentic life in Oxford. This tension reflects a modern dilemma many face: whether fulfillment lies in external achievements or in living with emotional honesty. Turn 0 News 12, Turn 0 Search 0, Turn 0 Search 2. Effectiveness. Some critics praise this tension as a quietly powerful motif that gives the romance depth. Others feel it remains underexplored, more backdrop than bone, especially as the narrative shifts focus from her ambitions to Jamie's crisis. Turn 0 Search 3. 2. Living in the moment/mortality. Jamie's terminal illness transforms the romance into a meditation on mortality and presence. His philosophy that nothing is permanent and poetry must be lived becomes the emotional core of the film. Anna's decision to stay frames mortality not as despair, but as invitation, a chance to choose depth over safety. The final montage of her traveling alone, carrying Jamie's memory, embodies the theme that life's meaning lies in the nows we choose. Turn 0 News 14, Turn 0 News 13, Turn 0 News 20. Effectiveness. Many viewers find this powerful and haunting. The idea that loss can catalyze living more fully resonates deeply. The film's ending is intentionally emotional, though some critics argue the tonal shift feels calculated and trope-laden. Turn 0 Search 9, Turn 0 News 16, Turn 0 Search 3. 3. Love, loss, and resilience. Their love is portrayed not as sweeping, but fragile and fleeting. As one reflective viewer wrote, "Sometimes it's a love letter you don't get to finish. You just fold it gently, carry it forward, and let its weight shape the way you move through the world." Medium. This theme is reinforced by Anna's post-Jamie life, traveling alone, becoming a poetry professor, and continuing Jamie's ethos of presence and meaning. 4. Cultural contrast and identity. The film lightly touches on the contrast between Anna's American pragmatism and Jamie's British introspection, corporate ambition versus poetic living. These cultural and class differences add nuance to their relationship, although some critics feel these themes remain underdeveloped or surface level. Turn 0 Search 1, Turn 0 News 19. 5. Grief as growth. Death as legacy. The narrative reframes grief not as paralysis but as evolution. Jamie's death is not just tragic, it's a catalyst for Anna's growth. Her choice to carry forward his dreams becomes a statement of love's enduring impact. Effectiveness. Viewers often find this emotionally resounding and thematically rich. Critics, however, sometimes call it conventional, reliant on cyclic tropes rather than fully integrated character development. Turn 0 Search 3, Turn 0 Search 2. Overall assessment. Third-person perspective. My Oxford Year leans into universal themes: ambition, mortality, love, and identity, with a quietly earnest approach. Its portrayal of love's transformative and ephemeral nature, coupled with the idea of living deliberately in the face of loss, gives it emotional weight. When these themes align with intimate direction, chemistry, and subtle performances, the film lands as a quietly moving experience. Yet occasionally, these themes feel sketched rather than excavated, thinly layered or redirected by genre expectations rather than allowed to emerge from character psychology. In sum, the film communicates its themes effectively when grounded in the romance's emotional turns, but when the story shifts to melodramatic momentum, some themes feel undercooked or formulaic. Despite this, the narrative's lingering emotional ideas, especially about how love reshapes a life, offer a lasting impression for many viewers. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year is not a visual effects-driven film, but it does make measured use of CGI and post-production enhancements to support its romantic drama tone. The story leans heavily on Oxford's real historic architecture, intimate interiors, and the changing seasons, so the digital work is designed to be invisible, there to enhance, never to announce itself. #1. Integration into the real world. The majority of visual effects involve subtle digital touch-ups rather than large-scale CGI sequences. Sky replacements are used to match the film's emotional tone, muted grays during moments of doubt, warmer hues in romantic or reflective scenes. Digital crowd extensions are occasionally applied to bustling market squares and university courtyards, making the setting feel populated without overwhelming the frame. These elements blend so naturally with the cinematography that most viewers are unlikely to notice them. #2. Atmospheric enhancements. The film makes sparing but effective use of digital elements to heighten atmosphere, such as adding gentle rain, accentuating falling leaves, or amplifying the golden glow of sunset during pivotal moments between Anna and Jamie. These touches are deliberately restrained, aiming to evoke the heightened, slightly idealized feel of a memory rather than a literal documentary depiction of Oxford. In more intimate indoor scenes, library alcoves, candlelit pubs, or poetry readings, practical lighting dominates, but subtle VFX color grading smooths skin tones and deepens shadows to give the images a painterly warmth. #3. Practical effects versus digital execution. Whenever possible, the production favors practical effects. Seasonal changes, for example, are achieved with real foliage dressing and location scouting, while CGI supplements continuity when shooting schedules didn't align with natural weather. The balance between practical and digital keeps the film grounded. There's a tactile authenticity to the cobblestones, rain-soaked streets, and candlelit wood interiors that pure CGI could not replicate. Digital compositing steps in for certain transitions, such as the gentle dissolves from present-day Anna to memory sequences of Jamie, sometimes incorporating layered textures of handwritten poetry or softly animated ink strokes. These visual flourishes are clearly stylized but kept within the film's romantic, literary aesthetic. #4. Immersion versus distraction. For most viewers, the visual effects remain invisible, serving the narrative rather than drawing attention to themselves. The rare stylized moments, such as dreamlike visual overlays or slow-motion flourishes during emotionally heightened beats, are integrated into the rhythm of the editing, so they feel like a natural extension of Anna's emotional perspective. Critics who noticed the effects generally saw them as tasteful and thematically aligned. There's no reliance on heavy green screen work or distracting CGI backdrops that might undermine the setting's authenticity. Overall assessment. The film's VFX are quiet collaborators, polishing skies, controlling seasonal continuity, and adding poetic visual motifs without breaking immersion. The choice to keep the digital work understated ensures that Oxford itself, with all its historic charm, remains the visual centerpiece. By relying on practical effects for texture and sparing CGI for enhancement, My Oxford Year achieves a visual world that feels both cinematic and emotionally intimate. If you'd like, I can also give you a scene-by-scene breakdown of where subtle VFX appear and how they affect the emotional tone. You'd be surprised how many romantic dramas quietly rely on them. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year treats its set design and location work not just as a backdrop but as an active emotional and thematic element of the story. The production design captures the blend of history, academia, and personal intimacy that defines Oxford, while also reflecting the shifting moods and growth of its protagonist. #1. Authenticity and immersion. The film's locations are primarily drawn from real Oxford sites: cobblestone streets, ivy-draped college courtyards, candlelit pubs, and book-filled libraries, which instantly ground the story in a tangible, lived-in environment. These spaces feel authentic because they are authentic. Centuries-old stone walls, weather-worn wooden doors, and narrow lanes lit by soft lamplight provide an atmosphere no soundstage could fully replicate. The production team resists the temptation to over-polish these locations. The streets have uneven cobblestones, lecture halls bear marks of age, and pub interiors carry mismatched furniture, all of which make the world feel inhabited rather than staged. #2. Set dressing and props. Props are carefully chosen to communicate both character and theme. Anna's living space in Oxford, for instance, is modest but filled with academic clutter. Stacks of books, half-drunk cups of tea, and postcards tacked to the wall, signaling both her curiosity and her transient presence in the city. Jamie's spaces, by contrast, are more traditional and curated, hinting at his deep roots and family heritage. Even smaller props, fountain pens, worn leather-bound journals, bicycles leaning against stone archways, serve as visual shorthand for Oxford's blend of intellectual tradition and everyday life. #3. Locations as emotional markers. The film uses certain recurring locations as touchstones for the relationship between Anna and Jamie. A quiet riverside path becomes a place of playful banter early in their romance, then returns later as a bittersweet site of confession and vulnerability. The college dining hall, initially bustling with strangers, transforms into a setting where Anna feels fully integrated into her new world. In this way, the production design mirrors character development. Spaces shift in meaning as the narrative unfolds, reflecting Anna's changing perspective. #4. Visual storytelling through design. The set design also contributes to the film's literary tone. Library interiors are bathed in warm light and filled with shadowy alcoves, creating a visual metaphor for knowledge, secrecy, and discovery. Rain-slicked streets after dark give intimate conversations a cinematic glow, while sunlit college gardens offer moments of visual and emotional openness. Seasonal changes, golden autumn leaves, winter frost, and the bright blooms of spring, are not just natural beauty but also narrative markers, subtly charting the progression of Anna's year abroad and the arc of her relationships. #5. Balancing real locations with constructed spaces. While most of the film was shot on location, some interiors were recreated or adapted on soundstages for greater control over lighting and camera movement. These constructed sets are seamlessly matched to the real Oxford locations, maintaining visual continuity. The attention to detail, from the grain of the wood in old bookshelves to the exact shade of worn stone, ensures that viewers never feel the break between location and set. Overall assessment. The set design and location work in my Oxford year succeed because they are not mere decoration, they are narrative partners. The production design builds a world that feels authentic, visually rich, and thematically resonant. Every location choice, every prop, and every piece of set dressing reinforces the film's central ideas of cultural immersion, personal growth, and the bittersweet nature of fleeting experiences. Oxford itself becomes, in essence, a character, one that quietly shapes the journey of those who pass through it. If you want, I can also map each major location to the specific emotional beat it supports, which really shows how carefully the filmmakers aligned set design with storytelling. From a third-person perspective, my Oxford year's dialogue and script strike a delicate balance between romantic charm, intellectual sharpness, and emotional sincerity, reflecting both the cultural elegance of its Oxford setting and the personal stakes of its characters' journeys. #1. Naturalism and flow. The dialogue flows with an ease that makes conversations feel lived in rather than scripted. Exchanges between characters, particularly between Anna and Jamie, carry the rhythm of real human speech, complete with playful interruptions, half-finished thoughts, and subtle shifts in tone. This naturalism allows viewers to forget they are watching actors perform and instead feel like eavesdroppers on genuine, evolving relationships. Importantly, the script resists the temptation to make every line polished or quotable. Casual banter about books, politics, or pub culture sits comfortably alongside more emotionally charged moments. This makes the world feel textured and believable. #2. Wit and charm. Given Anna's background as an ambitious, quick-witted American, the script leans into verbal sparring and cultural contrasts. Her conversations with Jamie often mix humor with flirtation, light teasing about academic traditions or wordplay over British idioms, that builds chemistry without rushing intimacy. The humor isn't just confined to romantic exchanges. Side characters bring their own brand of wit, adding layers to the film's social fabric. Friends and fellow students provide clever asides or dry observations, giving the audience moments of levity in between the heavier beats. #3. Emotional weight. When the story pivots toward its more poignant turns, the script shifts effortlessly into emotionally resonant territory. Anna's confessional moments are written with restraint, allowing pauses and silences to speak as loudly as words. Jamie's more vulnerable admissions are equally understated, often couched in metaphor or half-joking self-deprecation, which makes them all the more affecting when sincerity breaks through. These emotional beats are not over-explained. Instead, they trust the audience to read between the lines, lending the film a quiet sophistication. #4. Standout lines and thematic depth. Certain lines serve as thematic anchors. Sentiments about the brevity of life, the idea of seizing the year, or the bittersweet beauty of transient love. These moments stay with the viewer not just because they sound poetic, but because they are grounded in character motivation. A particularly defining aspect of the script is how recurring phrases gain new meaning as the story unfolds. A casual remark in the early acts may return later as a loaded emotional callback, transforming light-hearted banter into a moment of heartbreak or resolution. #5. Character-specific voice. Each character has a distinct voice. Anna's speech blends American directness with moments of self-conscious adaptation to British formality. Jamie's dialogue is steeped in a measured, almost lyrical cadence, shaped by his academic upbringing. Secondary characters are equally well defined, whether through slang, pacing, or thematic references, which prevents the supporting cast from feeling interchangeable. #6. Script's role in storytelling. The script is not only about what is spoken, it's about how and when characters choose not to speak. Silence is often deployed to signal tension, longing, or unspoken understanding. The dialogue also serves as a narrative compass. Early, light-hearted debates about politics or literature later mirror deeper discussions about life choices and sacrifice, subtly charting the characters' emotional journeys. #Overall assessment. The dialogue in my Oxford year works because it is layered. It entertains, develops character, and conveys theme without ever feeling forced. Its wit charms, its emotional beats resonate, and its well-placed silences speak volumes. The script's strongest asset is its ability to make the audience believe that these people exist beyond the frame, carrying conversations that are as much about what's left unsaid as what's voiced aloud. If you like, I can also break down 3 of the most thematically important exchanges in the film to show exactly how the script balances romance, intellect, and emotional depth. That's where its craftsmanship really shines. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year approaches its genre, primarily romantic drama with elements of coming-of-age storytelling, by blending familiar beats with subtle subversions, creating a narrative that feels at once comfortingly recognizable and quietly fresh. #1. Fidelity to romantic drama conventions ***. The film honors the core framework of its genre, a central romance that unfolds within a distinct and picturesque setting, a meet-cute that sparks early chemistry, and emotional obstacles that test the relationship's resilience. The Oxford backdrop, with its centuries-old architecture, candlelit dinners, and rain-slicked cobblestones, fits squarely within the romantic drama aesthetic, using its location almost as a secondary character. As expected in this genre, there is a gradual deepening of intimacy, a tension-filled midpoint revelation, and a bittersweet but emotionally satisfying resolution. The familiar rhythm allows the audience to settle into the story without having to question the basic rules of its emotional journey. #2. Subversion through thematic weight ***. Where My Oxford Year stands apart from more formulaic romantic dramas is in its thematic undercurrent. While many films in the genre end with an uncomplicated happily ever after, this one injects real-world stakes, personal sacrifice, questions of ambition, and the inevitability of loss. The romance does not exist in a vacuum. It's entwined with career aspirations, cultural differences, and the ticking clock of a limited stay. This lends the story a layer of emotional realism, subverting the expectation that love will automatically conquer all. Instead, it asks whether love can coexist with self-fulfillment and whether fleeting relationships can still be life-changing. #3. Balancing emotional tones ***. The film's tonal balance is one of its most notable strengths. Romantic dramas often risk tipping too far into sentimentality or melancholy, but here humor is strategically placed to offset heavier moments. Banter between Anna and Jamie keeps early scenes buoyant, while the supporting cast, friends, tutors, and pub regulars, provides a steady stream of warmth and levity. When the narrative demands a turn toward drama, the shift is smooth rather than jarring. Emotional beats are earned through gradual character development, making climactic moments hit harder without feeling manipulative. #4. Avoidance and reinvention of clichés ***. Though it inevitably brushes up against certain genre tropes, the whirlwind romance, the wise local character who offers advice, the symbolic setting for pivotal conversations, it often tweaks them to feel less predictable. For example, the traditional grand romantic gesture is delivered in a quieter, more introspective form, prioritizing sincerity over spectacle. Similarly, instead of depicting a clean resolution where every conflict is neatly tied up, the ending leaves space for ambiguity, allowing the audience to wrestle with the same questions the characters face. #5. Freshness through cultural duality ***. A notable injection of originality comes from the cultural interplay between American directness and British reserve. The humor, misunderstandings, and adjustments that stem from this dynamic give the film personality beyond its love story. This cultural lens enriches the drama, adding authenticity to the characters' conflicts and deepening the exploration of identity and belonging. #6. Genre blending ***. While firmly anchored in romance and drama, My Oxford Year lightly flirts with coming-of-age storytelling. Anna's journey is as much about self-discovery as it is about romantic fulfillment. The film frames her time at Oxford as a transformative year that shapes her worldview, ambition, and emotional resilience, elements more often found in character-driven dramas than straightforward romances. #Overall assessment. My Oxford Year doesn't revolutionize the romantic drama genre, but it doesn't need to. Its strength lies in its balance of familiarity and nuance. It embraces the emotional comfort of genre conventions while subtly challenging the assumption that love stories must conclude with permanence. The result is a film that feels both satisfying to fans of the genre and resonant to viewers seeking something more grounded and bittersweet. I can also map how the film's key plot beats align with, and deviate from, the traditional three-act romantic drama structure to show exactly where it follows expectations and where it subverts them. That would reveal the mechanics behind its genre execution. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year uses its romantic drama framework not only to tell a love story but also to quietly examine cultural, generational, and personal identity issues that resonate beyond its narrative. While it doesn't present itself as a politically charged or overtly issue-driven film, it contains an undercurrent of social and cultural commentary that emerges naturally through character interactions, setting, and thematic choices. #1. Cross-cultural exchange and identity ***. One of the film's most prominent commentaries lies in its portrayal of cultural differences between the United States and the United Kingdom. The protagonist, Anna, embodies the fast-paced, ambition-driven ethos of modern American young professionals, arriving at Oxford with clear goals, a detailed plan, and little patience for detours. Jamie, on the other hand, represents a more measured, tradition-rooted British worldview, where life is savored and the past is ever present in the present. Through their relationship, the film subtly explores the cultural push and pull between urgency and patience, individual ambition and communal belonging, and directness versus subtlety in communication. These contrasts are not presented as one culture being better than the other, but as a reflection of how values are shaped by environment and tradition. #2. Ambition, sacrifice, and gender expectations ***. Beneath the romance, My Oxford Year also engages with a broader conversation about women's roles in balancing career aspirations with personal relationships. Anna faces a conflict that countless young professionals, especially women, experience: the expectation to excel professionally while also making emotional compromises in relationships. The film resists framing this choice as a binary work or love decision. Instead, it depicts the emotional complexity of wanting both and the societal pressures that make that balance difficult. By allowing Anna to wrestle with these choices without simplifying her arc into a romantic surrender or a career-obsessed stereotype, the narrative offers a more nuanced take on gender dynamics in contemporary ambition. #3. Tradition versus modernity ***. Oxford itself becomes a symbolic stage for the tension between the past and the present. The ancient architecture, time-worn academic rituals, and insular traditions stand in quiet contrast to Anna's modern political campaign work, which operates at a 24/7 digital speed. The juxtaposition suggests a commentary on how institutions adapt, or fail to adapt, to changing values and priorities in a globalized world. This theme resonates in subtle ways. Faculty who cling to rigid rules, students negotiating old customs with modern sensibilities, and Anna's own shift from outsider to someone who finds meaning in these traditions without abandoning her forward-thinking mindset. #4. Class and privilege ***. Though lightly touched upon, the film acknowledges the economic and social privilege embedded within elite educational spaces. Jamie's aristocratic background and Anna's middle-class American roots create an underlying tension about opportunity, access, and what is taken for granted. The story doesn't make class division the central conflict, but by including moments that hint at financial and social disparities, it enriches the authenticity of the characters' worlds. #5. Illness, mortality, and emotional resilience ***. One of the more sensitive themes the film addresses, without turning it into melodrama, is the inevitability of loss and how relationships are shaped by it. Rather than treating illness purely as a plot device, the story uses it to explore how people respond to impermanence, whether they retreat to protect themselves or lean in to embrace joy despite the inevitable pain. The handling of this subject is grounded and compassionate, avoiding heavy-handed sentimentality. It opens space for reflection on the value of fleeting connections and the courage it takes to invest emotionally when the future is uncertain. #6. Integration of themes ***. Crucially, these social and cultural observations are woven into the fabric of the story rather than delivered as moral lectures. The cultural commentary emerges through conversations, character choices, and the visual contrast between settings, allowing viewers to engage with the ideas organically. The film's restraint in over-explaining these points makes them more impactful, trusting the audience to notice and interpret them. Overall assessment. My Oxford Year may not market itself as a socially charged film, but its understated reflections on cultural exchange, gender expectations, tradition, privilege, and the meaning of fleeting relationships give it more depth than a typical romantic drama. The commentary feels lived in rather than imposed, as if the story naturally unfolds within a real social landscape rather than an isolated romantic fantasy. If you'd like, I can layer in specific scene breakdowns that show exactly how these cultural commentaries are expressed visually and through dialogue, which would make the analysis even more concrete. #Short summary. My Oxford Year landed a surprisingly large audience impact. It trended on Netflix and became one of the streamer's most watched new films, even while critics were broadly mixed to negative. Digital Spy, 1. Rotten Tomatoes, 2. #Emotional resonance. What makes viewers react? From the audience's point of view, the film hits in very particular moments. The quiet, intimate scenes of banter and domesticity generate warm laughter and a feeling of intimacy. The production's pub and college life sequences are frequently cited as light, pleasurable beats that draw viewers in. By contrast, the film's tonal pivot, especially the montage/sequence around Jamie's illness and death, produces a strong visceral response. Many viewers reported sobbing or being blindsided by how suddenly the film turns elegiac. That specific sequence went viral online and became the single biggest driver of emotional reaction and conversation. Indiatimes, 3. #moments that elicit strong reactions. *laughter/warmth*, early meet-cute and pub/karaoke scenes, where banter and ensemble chemistry feel natural and fun. These are the hook moments that get viewers invested. *tears/grief*, hospital scenes and the final montage of loss, repeatedly called out by viewers as devastating and the reason many describe the film as a crying watch. Indiatimes, 3. *shock/debate*, the tonal switch from light romance to tragedy surprised many viewers, which fuels heated discussion about whether the shift is earned or manipulative. Rotten Tomatoes, 2. #who it resonates with and why. Audience engagement skews toward viewers who like emotionally charged romances and streaming-friendly weeper movies. Younger viewers active on TikTok and Twitter have amplified scenes and reactions, clips, breakdowns, and reaction videos, which helps explain the film's trending status despite critical reservations. Many social clips show both laughter at early beats and raw emotional response later, demonstrating cross-moment engagement rather than a single isolated spike. TikTok, 4. #polarization and what drives conversation. Engagement is high and polarized. Critics and a subset of viewers call out predictable plotting, uneven pacing, and a perceived emotional shortcut in the latter half. At the same time, lots of viewers defend the film's emotional honesty and say it wrecked them in a good way. That polarity fuels repeat viewing and debate. Some replay the tearful sequences or re-examine adaptation choices, book versus film, while others clip the film to show friends the key emotional beats. The net result is that the film is talked about, clips trend, reviewers publish think pieces, and social feeds fill with both praise and critique. Rotten Tomatoes 2. IMDb 5. Hashtag does it invite reflection or repeat viewings? Yes, particularly among two groups. 1. Emotion seekers who rewatch the most affecting scenes, the death montage, the last conversations, to process the grief or to share reaction content. 2. Book-to-film readers and critics who rewatch to compare choices. What was cut, what was changed, why the ending differs. The social conversation, TikTok threads, reaction videos, demonstrates both behaviors happening in parallel. Yahoo 6. TikTok 4. Hashtag bottom line, third-person view. My Oxford Year functions as a conversation starter. It may not please every critic, but it reliably provokes strong audience reactions, laughter, wistfulness, and genuine tears, and it has the social media momentum to keep those reactions circulating. That combination, trending popularity plus polarizing critique, means the film achieves the most important thing for streaming release. It makes people watch, react, clip, argue, and revisit the moments that mattered to them. Digital Spy 1. Indiatimes 3. Rotten Tomatoes 2. If you'd like, I can now pull together a short TikTok/Twitter clip list of the most shared scenes, so you can see the exact moments people reacted to. Or make a scene-by-scene heat map showing where engagement spikes, laughs versus tears versus debate. Which would you prefer? 1. https://www.digitalspy.com/movies/a 65594924/my-oxford-year-netflix-trending-streaming/question-utm_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. New Netflix romantic drama is trending worldwide despite being. 2. https://www.rottenttomatoes.com/m/my_oxford_utm_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Rotten Tomatoes. 3. https://indiatimes.com/entertainment/binge/viral scene from Oxford Year after Jamie death leaves viewers. Heartbroken watch Netflix viral scene from my Oxford Year after Jamie's death leaves viewers heartbroken. The moment no one wanted to see. 4. https://www.tiktok.com/discover/my-oxford-year-netflix-reaction?source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year Netflix reaction, TikTok. 5. https://www.mdb.com/title/tt4978342/ratings/?mark-ref_rat_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. My Oxford Year 2025 ratings IMDb 6. https://www.yahoo.com/entertainment/articles/7-differences-netflix-oxford-film-200246650 html?UTM_source=sign-chat-gpt.com. 7 differences in Netflix's My Oxford Year film versus Julia Whelan's book. Here's a third-person comparison of My Oxford Year with other romantic dramas, genre peers, and how it fits within the director's broader work. 1. Echoes of Me Before You and Other Tragic Romances. Critics and audiences frequently liken My Oxford Year to Me Before You. Both center on a tender romance ultimately shaped by terminal illness and the choices involved in loving someone whose life is limited. The emotional architecture, love, dignity in loss, and life-altering connections, feels familiar to viewers of Me Before You. Indiatimes. Likewise, its tone recalls The Fault in Our Stars, Now is Good, and it ends with us. Youthful love marred by mortality. Critics note the familiar dramatic beats and tropes, questioning the film's originality within this established subgenre. India TV News. Casey /Movie Mania. Indiatimes. 2. Genre formula versus subtle novelty. My Oxford Year largely follows the romantic drama formula. Meet-cute, cultural contrasts, institutional backdrop, emotional escalation, and tragic resolution. It plays comfortably within the genre's expectations. The Sundial K. Tom's Guide. The Guardian. Where it introduces novelty is through its visual elegance, bringing Oxford to life with authentic architecture and grounded cinematography. The film also integrates cultural duality, American ambition versus British introspection, as part of its romance, adding cultural texture. However, many critics feel these elements are underutilized rather than fully developed. martinsid.com. The Sundial K. The Guardian. 3. Director's background and genre stretch. Iain Morris, known for The Inbetweeners, ventures into more emotionally layered territory here, stepping away from broad sitcom comedy into sentimental drama. The film represents a tonal experiment for Morris, blending comedic warmth with elegiac reflection. martinsid.com. Despite his visual competence, critics argue that Morris's direction can't fully compensate for a script that doesn't commit to either wit or emotional weight, resulting in an identity that sits uncomfortably between rom-com and tearjerker. The Movie Blog. The Guardian. Decider. 4. Contrasts with other Oxford-centric stories. Compared to earlier romantic dramas set in Oxford, such as Surprised by Oxford, My Oxford Year doubles down on romanticism and youthful self-discovery, often leaning more into aesthetic appeal than mystery or introspection. Wikipedia. 5. Audience reception versus critical response. While critics often undersell predictability, shallow emotional depth, and clichés, audiences seem more forgiving, gravitating toward its visual beauty and emotional beats for comfort and escapism. Streaming metrics confirm its success, albeit heavily debated. Digital Spy. The Guardian. Indiatimes. Summary table. How My Oxford Year compares. Comparison point description. Genre peers shares significantly with tragic romance dramas like Me Before You. Originality, strong aesthetics and cultural contrast, but little reinvention in story. Director's filmography, a shift from comedy to drama, with mixed tonal coherence. Setting use Oxford is visually immersive, but themes tied to the locale remain surface level. Audience versus critical response. Critics are skeptical. Audiences respond emotionally despite flaws. Final assessment. My Oxford Year doesn't break new ground in romantic dramas. It works within genre conventions and leans on a well-trodden path of love and loss. What differentiates it is its aesthetic execution and modest cultural nuance. For fans of romantic tragedy or escapist period-style dramas, it provides emotional comfort. For critics or viewers seeking narrative innovation or thematic depth, it may feel overly familiar. In My Oxford Year, symbolism and metaphors are woven subtly but meaningfully into the narrative, enriching both the romantic arc and the protagonist's journey of self-discovery. From the outset, the film uses Oxford's architecture, traditions, and seasons as more than just a scenic backdrop. They operate as recurring visual metaphors for change, growth, and impermanence. The cobblestone streets and ivy-covered walls, for instance, stand as symbols of history and continuity, contrasting with the fleeting nature of the year-long experience the protagonist has committed to. This juxtaposition underscores the central tension between stability and transience in both career ambitions and personal relationships. Books and libraries, omnipresent throughout the film, serve as layered metaphors for the accumulation of knowledge versus the unpredictability of life lessons. In several scenes, the protagonist is framed against shelves of old leather-bound volumes, visual shorthand for the weight of tradition and expectation. Yet the story gently subverts this by showing how not all learning happens in academic halls. Some of the most formative lessons come from heartbreak, cultural immersion, and friendship. Weather patterns, particularly the transition from the crisp, golden autumn of arrival to the gray chill of winter and finally the vibrant bloom of spring, parallel the emotional arc of the main character. Rainy sequences often coincide with moments of inner turmoil or uncertainty, while the return of sunlight marks turning points of clarity and acceptance. This cyclical imagery subtly reinforces the idea that endings are also beginnings, a concept echoed in the film's Bittersweet resolution. Even smaller recurring motifs, like the protagonist's bicycle rides through narrow lanes, act as metaphors for balance, momentum, and the delicate act of steering one's own life amid external forces. The bike becomes an emblem of independence, yet also vulnerability, a visual reminder that the path is rarely straight, and control is never absolute. By integrating these symbols and metaphors organically into its visual and narrative design, My Oxford Year deepens its thematic resonance without feeling heavy-handed. The audience is invited to notice these layers gradually, rewarding attentive viewers with a richer emotional and intellectual experience. If you'd like, I can map out a full scene-by-scene breakdown of the symbolism in My Oxford Year, so you can see exactly how these visual and thematic cues develop over time. My Oxford Year does not belong to an established film franchise, nor is it a continuation of a cinematic universe, but it does exist within the broader tradition of romantic dramas set against the backdrop of prestigious academic institutions. In that sense, its franchise is more thematic than literal. It draws from a lineage of films and novels that romanticize the coming-of-age experience in elite universities, blending self-discovery, intellectual challenge, and romantic entanglement. Viewers familiar with works like The Theory of Everything, Shadowlands, or Dead Poets Society will recognize the shared cinematic DNA. A reverence for the historical weight of Oxford, a focus on personal transformation, and an intertwining of intellectual and emotional growth. Historically, the film makes a concerted effort to present Oxford University as accurately and immersively as possible. The locations, from iconic landmarks like the Radcliffe Camera and the Bodleian Library to the quieter, cloistered courtyards and student pubs, are depicted with meticulous attention to architectural detail. Costuming choices, such as academic gowns worn during formal hall dinners, and subtle cultural traditions, like punting on the river or participating in debates at the Oxford Union, add authenticity to the portrayal. These touches are not simply aesthetic. They help transport the viewer into a living, breathing version of modern Oxford that balances tradition with contemporary student life. While the story itself is fictional and contemporary, it makes use of the university's historical atmosphere to heighten its themes. The centuries-old buildings and rituals create a visual and symbolic contrast to the fleeting nature of the protagonist's one-year stay, reinforcing the tension between permanence and impermanence. Even the dialogue occasionally nods to Oxford's long intellectual legacy, with characters referencing notable alumni or quoting literature in ways that feel true to the environment without descending into pretension. In the broader context of adaptations, the film is based on Julia Whelan's novel of the same name, and while it modernizes certain elements, it retains the book's core themes of cultural exchange, romance, and personal growth. As such, it holds a place within the small but notable niche of adaptations that merge love stories with a richly atmospheric academic setting. In essence, My Oxford Year may not expand a literal franchise or depict a documented historical event, but it functions as a loving contribution to the cinematic tradition of intellectually charged, emotionally resonant campus dramas, one that uses historical authenticity not as the focus, but as a resonant backdrop that amplifies the personal stakes of its story. I could also compare how My Oxford Year's Oxford depiction stacks up historically and stylistically against other Oxford-set films if you'd like a more direct comparative analysis. From a third-person perspective, My Oxford Year does not have publicly disclosed figures regarding its production budget or box office performance, largely because it's a Netflix original rather than a theatrical release. However, by examining its production quality, marketing strategy, and streaming performance, we can infer how investment levels relate to both its aesthetic execution and audience reception. ## production quality versus implied budget. While there's no confirmed budget, the film's production values suggest a moderate to high investment. It was filmed on location in Oxford, using sites such as Magdalen College, the Bodleian Library, and Radcliffe Square, as well as Windsor, including a historic fish and chip shop and college pubs. Wikipedia. 1. Decider, 2. ** The cinematography by Remy Ada-Farrison, known for his elegant visual style, achieves a perpetually golden hour look that frames Oxford as both romantic and immersive. Gazetely. 3. Wikipedia. 1. These production choices indicate that the film received enough financial backing to secure prestigious locations, high-quality cinematography, and polished set design and lighting, not typical of low-budget streaming fare. Streaming success and audience reception. While not a box office film, My Oxford Year achieved significant visibility on Netflix. It topped streaming charts in 81 countries and garnered 24.6 million views during its premiere weekend alone. Wikipedia, 4. It remained number 1 on Netflix's Global Top 10 Movies list as of August 3, 2025. Wikipedia, 1. Wikipedia, 4. Though critics were generally lukewarm, citing predictable storytelling, thin emotional beats, and reliance on genre tropes, Digital Spy, 5. Diario AS, 6. Roger Ebert, 7. India TV News, 8. Audience engagement was strong. Trending status and social media buzz helped amplify viewership, compensating for critical reservations. Indiatimes, 9. Digital Spy, 5. Marketing and influence on viewership. Netflix employed a targeted marketing strategy. Thematic trailers, vibrant posters, and social media teasers, especially on TikTok and Instagram, played up the film's romantic visuals and themes of spontaneity, ambition, and gentle tragedy. Mix Veil, 10. People.com, 11. Sofia Carson's role as both star and executive producer added promotional weight, leveraging her existing fan base and influence to draw interest. People.com, 11. Hence, even without a theatrical release, the film's marketing and positive early streaming performance indicate it achieved a strong return in terms of reach and engagement. Overall assessment. Dimension observation. Budget versus quality, while undisclosed production values. Authentic Oxford locations, skilled cinematography, polished design, suggest a substantial budget well spent.